Welcome to ANTH 140, the anthropology of alcohol. So come on inside with me and let me buy you a shot of booze and culture. All right. Another episode of Booze and Culture. Today, we're going to wrap up South America in just one lecture. Sad. Mainly going to focus on mainly just one area, but talk about a few other places as well. I'll be your spirit guide and your life coach as we make it through today. All right, let's get started. So let's go on with the first slide. Great shot of Machu Picchu. This is in South America, in Peru. So we'll talk about a little overview of South America and then some alcoholic beverages that are enjoyed in that region. Right. Huge. 421 million people, 12 countries, right? Everybody knows where South America is, but in case you don't, there's a map there. Mainly Spanish, but a huge portion in Brazil. They speak Portuguese, right? Because that's where people first came over from Portugal and set up a colony there and carved out this giant chunk of rainforest. And hopefully some of it will still be there when your kids are older. Anyway, religion, 90% Christian. Most of that is made up of Roman Catholic, and there's, spatterings of other Christian groups as well, but also many other religions as well, but 90% Christian. All right, next slide. Now, I mentioned this when we talked about Mexico, just briefly, but I was saying that the earliest evidence of people in Mexico was 10,000 years. And some new evidence shows that it might be more like 11,000 years. And I mentioned this site, I didn't mention it by name, but Monteverde, which is in Chile. This is the oldest site in the New World. So the oldest site in the New World is at the very bottom of South America, almost the terminus of where people came over, right? If they're coming over the land bridge, which they did, and they moved down through North America, and they moved down through Central America and into South America. It's a long trip. People start coming over around, at the earliest 20,000 years, 18,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, that we know of from the evidence that we have up in the far north, up in Alaska and in that region. Maybe as early as, 18 to 20,000 years ago. But we don't have evidence of 18 to 20,000 years ago in Alaska. The earliest evidence we have in Alaska is about 15,000 years ago. This is 3,000 years earlier. So what's up with that, right? I mean, it's really kind of crazy. The reason, I know there's some kind of, wacky speculation that people could have come over across the Pacific on boats, and skipped the whole land bridge and came over. There is zero evidence that anyone had sailing vessels that could navigate anything like that at all, even accidental, that could have happened that early. And genetically, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. So it's really just it's a non-starter in regards to that. People came across the land bridge and moved down, but they moved along a coastal route. And they weren't huffing it like every day, walking 15, 20 miles. People were just slowly moving along the coast. But if you're moving along the coast during the Ice Age, the coastline is now underwater. That coastline is underwater, way underwater. Because when the last Ice Age, when the big melt happened, then you end up with rising sea level. And the seas rose, and they covered up any archaeological evidence that would have been there. So, 8,500 years ago, site of Monteverde, first inhabitants in South America. Now, the gourd, potato, and bean domestication all take place in South America. So, hey, for those of you who like beans and potatoes, you can thank your South American ancestors for it, because that's where it all started. And I know you're thinking like, oh, well, yeah, but what about potatoes and Irish? And yeah, well, potatoes came from the New World, as did tomatoes. You ever wondered what Italian food was like prior to 1520, when the Spanish brought back tomatoes, and then it ended up taking off? And I don't know, when I think of Italian food, I think of tomato-based food, but it wasn't always that way. A lot of things were domesticated here in the New World and brought back over there, and vice versa. All right, moving on to a little more of an overview of some of the earliest complex societies. So you have the Norte Chico, that's in the central Peruvian coast. That goes back 4,500 years ago. It lasts from about 3,500 BC to 1,800 BC. And you can see that there's an image of one of the sites there, the Norte Chico site, with a kind of in a dry, deserty looking land with the mountains in the background. So, a little interesting tidbit about that site. So, as far as complex societies goes, or state-level societies, in order to mobilize labor and to pay people, to feed people while they're not looking and worrying about their own food, you end up with a level of specialization that occurs. This is something we're all very familiar with. This is what I do for a living to get paid. I'm not out finding my own food and building my own shelter and doing all those things, right? I pay someone to do that for me. I'm paid to do this, right? To teach or to do research. You're going to college so you can learn to do something that you want to do that you will get paid for. The point is, when you have people and you start mobilizing labor so that they will work for you, that means that they can't go out and find their own food. They're spending their days doing things for you. You have to pay them. Well, when you start getting to that level of society, that type of society, every society has some basic staple that that city or that culture is built on. Be it corn or barley or wheat, whatever it is, rice, right? You have to have that some kind of basic grain that's going to get people through this, right? So you can, something that you can create a lot of and you can store it. Well, there was no evidence that Norte Chico had this. No evidence of corn, no evidence of anything. The only thing they were finding were anchovies. Lots and lots of anchovy bones. The archaeologists kept finding these things everywhere. And they're not finding any staple food at all. And for a long time, from like the mid-40s to like early 1950s, up until, relatively recently, like, the last 20 years or so, it was thought that this was one of these rare places outside of the norm that somehow built their empire on tiny fish, essentially, right? I mean, like, that. How is that even a thing? But about 15 years ago or so, archaeologists found very small corn cobs. So they did have corn. Wasn't based on their culture was not based on anchovies. It was based on corn, which makes sense. So they threw that idea out. Isn't that great? That's how science works. You just keep trying to disprove and disprove until you can't disprove it, and it becomes real. Science. Gotta love it. Now, the next group we'll talk about, there's many groups, but these are just some of the highlights, right? The Moche in north coast of Peru, 100 BC to 700 AD. There's a great pottery. That's the Moche pottery you see an image of there. And then the Inca. Remember we talked about the Aztec? This is 95 years, 1438 to 1533. 95 years. But you've heard so much of the Inca, and this is what present-day Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Colombia. Now, the reason it was only 95 years, just like the reason that the Aztec only lasted for 92, was that the Spanish came in. They would have kept going a lot longer, no telling how long, but they were full throttle, and both Aztec and the Inca were in a very healthy situation. Things were fine with their, they weren't at war with any other groups, they had food surpluses, everything was fine. But Spanish came in, stirred it all up. So Hernan Cortez is the one who ended everything with the Aztec as he moved into Mexico. And some 20-something years later, about 15 years later, his second cousin, Pizarro, Francisco Pizarro, moves in and does the same thing that his cousin did with the Aztec, did the same thing with the Inca. It's pretty much one family is pretty much responsible for the downfall of the Inca and the Aztec, which is kind of mind-blowing. But all right, so going on to the next slide, the Inca Empire was the last great political system in the culture area known as the Central Andes. That whole area, just like Mesoamerica, we talk about Mexico and Guatemala and Belize and Honduras and El Salvador and all that. This is talking about that area that makes up Colombia and Peru and Chile and Ecuador, that whole region we refer to as the Central Andes. Many other earlier complex cultures had existed in the region for more than 2,000 years, including two other empires that were very successful, had come and gone. And just like the Aztecs in Mesoamerica, the Inca were part of a long cultural tradition. Just like with the the Aztec had come together, joining forces with these three different empires, three different state-level societies to form one empire. Same is true here, where these four different groups came together to form the Inca Empire. Now, go on to the next slide. This woman that you see here, she's got a purposeful cranial deformation that has occurred to signify an elite status and also beauty, which kind of is the same thing in many ways, because if you are elite, then you are more of an element of beauty that comes with that, right? But you can see how her forehead is in line with her nose angle, right? So it's an extension really of the angle of her nose as it comes up. Now, to do that, you end up with, you can do this as a child. Any of you have been around a child, a baby, a brother, sister, an aunt, a niece or nephew or whatever. You know to be careful around a newborn baby with their soft head, right? It allows for human birth to take place because of the small birth canal of the pelvis. It allows for the head to be a little more malleable through that time period. The plates in the skull don't fuse until almost over a year. At least some fusion happens in that first 6 months, and it continues on for the next few years. That is what makes this possible. But because of that evolutionary trait that we have that allows that to occur, it also allows us to shape the skull. So with this cradle boarding, you see this baby that's put down on this board and swaddled, and then you see the other board that's coming up and the strings and rope that's attached to it, and you can tighten that a little bit each day, just ever so slightly, and that eventually is going to push down and change the shape of that skull. Does no damage whatsoever to brain activity. It's just a permanent sign of a particular status. To the next slide, this is the stuff you see on Ancient Aliens or whatever kind of show, right? This is not an alien. This is just a Peruvian skull from an elite individual that has had his or her cranial shaped. Cranium shaped, not cranial, cranium. Now, to get into the historic period, Spanish conquest, 1532. That's when you got Francisco Pizarro moving in, second cousin of Hernan Cortez, same one who did all that with the Aztec, in Mexico. You have New Spain and Brazil. That you saw the same map in that Mexico lecture. So you have them that are in control of these two countries that are in control of South America. Then the Wars of Independence. I said again in that previous lecture that you end up between 1808 and 1825 when New Spain really starts to fall apart. All of these different countries, their independence year is most of them are during that time period because Spain starts to lose its grip on the New World and actually ends up losing every claim. To move forward with the environments, we're talking a huge area here. We're talking about glaciers from Argentina to the desert, some of the driest places on the planet where sometimes not even an inch of rainfall will occur within a year in some of the deserts. So you have deserts in the west, the Andes Mountains north and south, the Amazonian rainforest that's in Brazil and in other parts of Venezuela. So a highly diverse area. Alcoholic beverages. How about chicha? Yes, chicha. As early as 5000 BC, I love talking about chicha. 3 to 4% alcohol. It's made of maize, corn, right? This is some Peruvian blue corn, some Peruvian purple corn that actually I grew here on the Penn State Ag lands, and it takes about 3 to 4 days to ferment. And it's often the women are the brewers. And I was just talking about that in another a recent lecture as well. Especially with the Inca, the women are the ones that are in charge of making the chicha, right? Now, some of you have heard of chicha, some of you, and yes, it is the one that has a very special technique that I can't wait to talk about. Moving on to the next slide, though, before we get into how it's made. It's all, maize is often used to make chicha. It's a mild beer, is what it is. It's a very low, 3 to 4% beer. It was central with the Inca, with early Andean political and social behaviors. You see this Inca beer mug, or called a quiro, that you see there on the right, and then there's some modern chicha there on the left. Now, okay. Now, I was going to do this, but I wasn't able to I didn't have the time to grind up any of this corn. But what you do is you take your corn and you grind it up with a grinding stone, and you end up with like a very, a pretty coarse meal, that's ground up. And then you take that, you put it in your mouth, and you chew it up. And you make what's called a moco, or a spitball, and you pull this out, and you make these little spitballs, and you set them out, and you let them dry for a couple of days, or a day, and then you take those. Now you're thinking spit, like you're chewing this up and spitting. I'm not going to drink that. Okay, you take those, and then you let them dry. You take those dry mocos. They look like little cookies at this point, and the fermentation's already started to take place a little bit, because they smell like bread is making, right? What's happening is the amylase that's in your saliva helps to convert those starches into sugars. Now, if you've ever taken just a plain cracker, like an unsalted plain cracker, and you just let it sit on your tongue for a while, just let it sit there for about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, all of a sudden that plain cracker that tastes like nothing will taste a little sweet, because that amylase is turning that starch into sugar, which is exactly what you need. If you're not doing the germination, then you're taking this corn and you're turning those starches into sugars with your spit. So you take those spitballs that are dry, you put them in some water, you bring it up, not boil it, you bring it up to like 130 degrees, 140 degrees, and then you let that mixture with water sit for a while. It begins to ferment. So in my ancient brews class, we actually did this. What you can see here is the students are chewing up the corn, spitting it out. Go to the next slide. Here's the disgusting spit into this bucket, and there you see on the right our little mocos, our little spitballs that we've made. I sat at my office for a couple of days. I come back in the next morning, it smells like fresh bread, like the smell of fresh bread from student spit. It was the craziest thing. So we took that, went over to the research kitchen, and we put it in hot water, let it sit, and then we put it in jars, let it ferment for a couple of days, and there you have it. Now, before we go on to the next slide, I will play you a clip here, and so quite a few times I've been on this show called the obligatory PSU pregame show, and it's with Mike the Mailman and Brandon Noble from the 1994 Penn State team. He also went pro with the Cowboys and with Washington and 49ers, and Chris Bugliani and Kevin Horn from Armwood State, a couple guys. They bring me on there to talk about alcohol, and they usually film it at Champs. So it's filmed over at Champs, and they helped me pick corn, and they helped me do all that, and I brought some of the chicha, and I had them actually chew up some of it. We'll play this clip. It's like 10 minutes long, and it was filmed 2 years ago on Halloween. So if you're wondering why they're dressed like the way they're dressed, it's because it's Halloween. Just wanted to clarify that. So enjoy this.
beautiful corn. God's country.
Yeah, my name's Greg Roth. I'm an emeritus professor in the Department of Plant Science in the College of Ag. And I've worked at Penn State to work with farmers on growing grain crops, like the corn we have behind me here.
So this is all Penn State land out here.
Yeah, we have about 1,000 acres of land out here that we use for research purposes.
Good looking corn right there.
Right. We look at the difference between that variety and this variety. So our ag students come out here and they learn how to do research. They also get familiar with actually growing of the crops. We employ a lot of students over here during the summer and the fall to help us with research, so they get some good experience in that regard. They get to work with professors and learn about some of the up-and-coming new technologies and some of the opportunities in agriculture, in crops these days.
House today, like one nail.
Kind of like preschool.
It's a great shot.
Do that again, man.
South America and Central America a little bit. They did use it a little bit more.
So we're gonna chew that up.
Yeah. Yeah, put a big spoonful in. We'll go ahead and make a ball out of it. Take the ball out, we'll put it in there. And then I'll put it called.
We're continually looking for new value-added opportunities for Pennsylvania farmers, and one thing that we've seen a lot of interest in has been an increase in locally grown grains for the brewing and the distilling industries. So maybe about 5 years ago, we began experimenting with rye for the distilling industry, and then barley for the malt and brewing industry. And my colleagues have worked with hops.
We can run through a second time if that works.
Yeah, maybe a second time. Yeah,
Okay,
maybe a
well,
little.
I'll run all this through once.
But I think one more time will probably
Okay.
do it.
Okay.
Okay.
That was a Mr. Incredible
Wow.
shot right there.
That was
Very good.
That
well
was
done.
intense.
We
was
picked all
intense.
this.
I did. All by
You did.
myself.
You personally.
All by myself.
Yes. So we are here now with Dr. Kirk French.
Dr. Kirk Ferenc, if you will.
If you will. Wow, I don't know what that means. I must have missed a segment.
What do you got for us, Dr. Kirk?
Oh, so listen, you know, the ag department here at Penn State has been nice enough to grow a little
Just
purple
a little
corn.
A little corn.
A little bit, 4 rows. You know, it was nice. It was nice. And you guys helped, did a great job picking this corn today.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
It was fun.
It was a good time.
Yeah, here's some here. We shucked it, and then we pulled the kernels off, and then you guys ground it. You did a good job.
Thank you.
But-
I feel like that's what I was best at.
But you know, it was
You were
really
good at that,
I
yeah.
was pretty good.
A lot of aggression.
Grinder. Exactly.
really what you guys did for an hour is like this much.
I know.
I know. So good thing they had a mill out there
Yes,
for us
I got-
to
yeah.
use. So that was nice.
Thank God for technology.
So we're gonna make chicha.
What?
Chicha.
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 Sounds fun.
So chicha is just it's a corn-based alcohol in South America, big with the Inca, but it goes back 5,000 BC, so 7,000 years. So it's been done for a long time. But most alcohol is made. Actually, before I get into all that, I'm just gonna jump right into. Are you okay?
He's not used to
Those
that.
fake
yeah.
blonde hairs
Yeah,
will really.
yeah,
they'll
the
really get
hair
you.
is starting to bother me.
What chicha's known for is the fact that it requires saliva. Yeah, it requires human spit. Yeah. Well, not your. You could use someone else if you want to, which is what I'm doing with you guys. I'm trying to make this stuff, and I
Right.
need all the help. It's a communal thing, getting together, hanging out, and chewing up some ground corn.
Spitting it into
So
a
I think that
dish.
while I continue to explain this, maybe we could just get started. So
Why not?
You want us to chew this stuff?
yes, I need you to chew it. But,
It's tough with the
All right, you know what? I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to
okay,
do it.
listen, but just a little bit, okay?
Yeah, too much.
Just
too much.
just
is
a little bit, like
bad
maybe
recipe.
like a half a tablespoon. Did you already? Don't swallow this, okay? You know what?
You gotta be able to
No,
talk.
no,
'cause
no,
None
no.
of us can talk.
I need to tell you what to do, so I
Good
need to get rid
job.
of that. Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. All right, you keep that going. You try to get as much saliva in it. You're trying to create a little ball of goo in your mouth. Chew it. Get the spit all around it. Really get it going. You getting it going?
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're doing is that this corn has not been germinated. It's not been malted.
Mm-hmm.
And in the malting process, the sugars explode when it starts to germinate. We're skipping that, and we're using the amylase enzyme in the saliva that's going to turn those starches into sugars. Look at that. All that talking I was doing,
What do we do with it when we're done?
you put it in this bucket.
We'll put it down here.
Yeah, go ahead. Wow. You're not done with it yet?
Like missed.
You're taking too long. This is an inefficient group. Did you make a little ball of it? Let me see that. Let me grade that.
It was kind of like a ball.
Let me see.
We're going for number 2. Oh, Kevin needs some.
Man, that is some rookie. What's going on there? Just keep going. We need lots of saliva in it. So what's going to happen? Then I'm going to dry it out for about 24 hours. It's going to help convert those starches into sugars.
Oh.
And then,
Bounces back up in your face.
did you spit it real hard? Oh, I
Normal
shouldn't.
spit.
Just gently. You be gentle.
Yeah.
And so then we're going to turn this into. We're going to boil it after a day and a half. We're going to boil it, and then we're going to let it ferment for 48 hours. What? Are you having a hard time? Is he choking? Call somebody.
I think
What?
Mike wants to swallow.
What's going? You're supposed to take a ball of it out of your mouth. What's happening? Look how
man
much
don't
has
like
been
it.
produced.
Not much.
There's nothing in here. It's like we didn't do anything
I
yet.
feel like I did a great job pre-masticating that corn.
Don't say pre-masticating like that. Not dressed like that. You just can't. It's just something creepy about it. Okay, the point is, this helps to get the fermentation process going. Now, I wish I had some chicha to share with you today, but I don't.
Me too.
But but next week I'll bring some on, and we're gonna make this. I have to boil it now. But you're still chewing. Here, give him this. He needs that, man. All right. I don't know. It's supposed to be a communal effort. And it's supposed to be a ball that you take out. You're like just spitting it like a loogie or something. Can you form a little ball in your mouth? Like a little.
We're all new at this. We're
'Cause I
very
think-
new. This is
I
new.
have so many jokes that I'm afraid won't slip past censorship.
Hey, can I just-
listen to the obligatory podcast for those?
We are playing the Cornhuskers, right? I don't keep up with this. But is that
We're not, but we're
Iowa.
playing
Well,
Iowa,
that's corn.
which is, historically associated with corn,
okay?
thanks to Field of Dreams.
Is that right?
And like 99% of the land
How
mass
do
in
you
the
get it
state.
to make
Yeah.
a little ball?
Just keep chewing.
Can't do it.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I'm sure. Wow, you're really going for it.
He's having some Well, I want to be able to do it.
Good.
What a guy.
Okay.
Less than incredible, brother.
Well, so anyway,
So you're wearing pink today.
wow. Yeah, I am wearing pink.
I'm
today.
helping you with the clock, man. It's what I'm here for.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I am wearing pink today. I'm a
That
part
and
of a,
protecting
I was
Eternia
honored
from
to be
Skeletor.
asked to be a part of the Real Men on Campus.
Yeah.
Where Real Men wear pink on campus and just raising awareness for it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and so I'm raising money. You can go to boozeandculture.org and you can click on the logo, Real Men on Campus, donate. Just trying to. I mean, if all I have to do is wear pink for a month. That's the least I can do. It just seems trite almost that that's all I have to do, but that's what I'm doing, and I'm honored to be a part of it. So, other than that, I'm just gonna. I haven't.
So we're
I
going
haven't
to
had a
chew up
chance
the rest of this,
Yeah, the next.
and you're going to turn it into booze.
1, 2, 3.
Someone's gonna chew up the rest of this.
Not me.
We did our part.
Okay, so see, they're silly as hell, right? But it was fun. They didn't seem to enjoy the chewing up. It really dries your mouth out. Now let's go on to the next slide here. And aren't they cute? I just got to bring these guys up. I mean, how many of you have had guinea pigs? A couple of you, right? I mean, I didn't, but because I think keeping a rat in the house seems weird, but that's cool. Very common thing to have in Peru. Go to the next slide. Because they're a food item, I'm sorry for those of you who have pet guinea pigs. Delicious though. Potatoes, beans, guinea pig. Domesticated in South America. The reason they're great is their high reproduction rate. Easy to keep. You keep them in a corner of your home. They reproduce often. You pick one up, you eat it, fry it. I mean, if you fry something, anything's good, right? So anyway, just wanted to bring up another thing that was domesticated, and it has nothing to do with alcohol, but I hear it pairs well with chicha, but so there's that. Now let's move on to one more. Let's go on to the next slide to talk about masato. Now masato is kind of like chicha, except it's made from manioc. Remember manioc, yucca, cassava, those things that we talked about when we were talking about Uganda. So this is first mentioned in a text in 1636. So what happens is Antonio de Leon Pinello, in his book that he wrote, he talks about a drink that the girls made out of the goo that they chewed on and set it inside of a glass. And when he mentions that, he's describing what is masato. And so we know that it was being, by 1636, if they're doing it, then it was definitely being done, pre-contact period. So again, it's the same thing. You're going to chew this stuff up. The amylase is going to turn those starches into sugars. You let it sit out for a while, put it in some hot water, let it ferment 3 to 4 days. There you go, 2 to 6% alcohol, manioc. So moving on to the next one, let's talk about Brazil for just a moment with cachaça. Cachaça. Distilled beverage made from sugarcane juice, right? So posh is made from sugar canes, right? It's different than posh from Mexico. It's a distilled beverage. It's only distilled once. Dates back to 1532, and there is this Portuguese colonizer that he brought sugarcane from Madeira. So Madeira is an island off the coast of Portugal. Brought cuttings of sugarcane, planted it there, and really, I mean, it was the sugarcane that really led to the slave trade in Brazil. You have the Portuguese with El Marina Castle, and that's where it all got started, right? We were talking about that when we were talking about Ghana. And they're moving people over to Brazil. It's mainly because of the sugarcane. The sugarcane plantations that really fueled the economy there for so long. It also makes a really nice caipirinha, and if it's the main ingredient. That's on the next slide. It looks delicious because it is. And another alcohol that is so important to all of us, so many college students, is rum. It's also a distilled beverage made from sugarcane, but it's made from sugarcane byproducts. So like molasses, sugarcane juice, like a mixture of both. Now, first recorded in Brazil in 1620, Barbados actually loves to claim that they were the first to produce rum, but all the evidence, or the vast majority of it, the solid evidence, points to Brazil. So sorry, Barbados. I know you'd like to claim it, but it seems to have happened in Brazil. Now, one thing I do want to point, a lot of you like Bacardi. I know you do. It's really popular. Something that's cool that has to do with the Booze and Culture logo. You know there's a bat on the Booze and Culture logo? Yes, there's a bat in there. There's a reason why there's a bat on there, and there's a reason why there's a bat on the logo of the shirt. Because if it was not for the bat, you probably wouldn't have sugarcane. If you don't have sugarcane, you wouldn't have rum. Because that bat, Mexican free-tailed bat, is what is responsible for the pollination of sugarcane. And that is why Bacardi chose it as their logo, because if it wasn't for that little guy, as they fly around grabbing insects over the fields of sugarcane, that pollen gets spread all over the sugarcane field, and you end up with a successful sugarcane crop. And I think this is the last, well, one of the last alcohols I'll mention is aguardiente. Now, this is a generic term for distilled alcohol. It's very common throughout different parts of Latin America. Posh is essentially aguardiente. It just has its own name and it has its own purpose. But aguardiente just means fire water, right? Agua, water. Ardiente is kind of fiery or burning. But it's extremely popular in the Andean region of Colombia. And so there's many different types of aguardiente. There's really low end, there's really high end, and it's very, very common, up to 60% ABV. So it's on the high end, like Posh is, right? Like we talked about. And you can see in that map where that Andean region is in Colombia. So going on to the next slide, can't talk about South America without mentioning wine. Relatively new phenomenon, new meaning the last 100 years or so, that they started. I mean, the region is great for growing grapes. So it starts in the 16th century, but doesn't really become a big deal until the last 100 years or so. The foothills of the Andes Mountains in Chile and in Argentina, it's perfect for this. Today, Chile is the 7th largest producer of wine in the world. Argentina is the 5th. So these are major wine producing areas, and some really fine wine as well. Lots of awards, does really well. And anyway, so a very important part of the economy, especially in Chile and in Argentina. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up. Going to the next slide. This is Sue George. I mean, if you haven't listened to the Life Aquatic soundtrack, do yourself a favor, check this out. And since we've already done Spanish with salud, we should do a little Portuguese, right? So if you were in Brazil, you would raise a glass, hopefully not a glass of corn, or at least if it was corn, it would be distilled or something. But you would say, saúde, and you're drinking. You guys have a good one.